The opinions expressed on the Custody Queen Show are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for personal, professional legal advice. The persons discussed are fictional and not based on actual clients.
Thought it was love, had kids in between. You can count on us, we're the Custody Queens. Yeah, you can count on us, we're the Custody Queens.
Good morning, Go Country listeners. It is Saturday, it is popping, and I hope that you are, either in your car, or you're sitting on your couch listening. We have an amazing show today. We have Dr. Imani Walker, and I'm going to get into her fabulous background and her podcast and all of that good stuff. But before we do that, we're going to break the ice a little bit, and we are going to start with the CQ Talk Box. And this is a new game that we have come up with, and it is incredibly helpful in building relationships. We have age-appropriate questions depending on if you're doing this with your bestie, your husband, or your 4-year-old child. It's going to be available to the public very soon, but I can tell you that my relationships with my children have grown immensely with just sitting there and listening and asking questions. And she can read now. My 8-year-old, she reads very well, so we can actually do it together. But it's awesome. We're gonna break the ice, and we're just gonna start with Dr. Amani. So Sam, break the ice.
All right. Do you believe everything happens for a reason?
Yes, I do believe everything happens for a reason. And even if it doesn't necessarily happen for a reason on a cosmic level, I feel like it's at least comforting to be able to say to myself or to other people, look, there's nothing that you can really do to change the situation. You just have to be like water.
I agree with you.
Let it flow.
1000%.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more, especially and just even in a non-practical sense, how clumsy I am. I just really like the idea of shifting a little bit of my accountability into the cosmos.
It's your destiny. And I've already spilt today. So, it's just, I agree 1000%. I think everything that we go through in life, challenging, rewarding, it just makes us who we are. And I think you have to live life to look back and kind of understand why that happened and what you went through. And you may not understand it while you're going through it, but I think that truly a lot of everything happens for a reason. And you can't sit there and worry and be fearful, because that doesn't change the outcome and of what's going to happen. You just have to attack it.
Well, that just sounds like anxiety, I think, more so than anything. As far, let's say you take a flight and something happens and you miss the flight. I'll say to myself, well, you know what, maybe I just wasn't destined. Maybe I shouldn't be on that flight. Maybe the person that I would have been sitting next to may have talked my ear off. Maybe there might have been a fight. Maybe I'll get a better seat on the next flight coming up.
That's a really, I need to start doing that, because I would be the girl that would be so upset that my flight was changed. It's going to change my whole day and the next day, and what am I going to do with the kids? So I guess I need to train myself to say, that flight wasn't for me.
Yeah, and it's almost like the worry kind of makes you go through it twice, right? You have the anxiety leading up to it, and then it happens, and then it's double bad.
And I think people going through a divorce, they are fearful, or they don't want to make that next step, or that that transition, so they live in this just place of anxiety rather than just dealing with it head on.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, okay,
Kristen.
So I have another CQ Talk Box question, and I will start with Dr. Amani. How do you express your anger?
How do I express my anger? Okay. First of all, I definitely can say that as a person, I come from a family where we kind of tend to bottle up our emotions. So when it is time to let out how we feel, especially anger, we're really great at it. But since I'm a psychiatrist, I've learned that that's not really the best way to deal with anger. So I go through a series of kind of exercises with myself. So I'll say, all right, you know what? Let's try to take the emotion or my emotion out of it. Is it that important for me to get upset about? And when I say get upset, I mean being angry and expressing yourself through anger really it's a bit of a physical process. So I want to make sure that if I'm going to be expending this energy, it's worth it. Like, is this like somebody cutting me off? Is it someone, I'm at the store, I'm at Trader Joe's, and they, try to cut me in line? Like, there are certain things that I will attempt to kind of, okay, let me see if I can decrease any type of just unnecessary emotions. But if I really feel that I am in the right, I will definitely let it be known. But I also will just make sure that what I'm saying is factual and to the point, because if I tell somebody, well, you know what, I don't like what you did and your face looks stupid, that's not going to help the conversation. Right. And it's just going to cause me to have to talk to the person longer, because then they want to get in their licks too. So I guess I express my anger well, but I try to just keep it factual, and I try to keep the energy as low as possible so that I don't get too upset and that I can just get away from the person.
That's a very good answer. My family is very similar. We tend to bottle things up, and I know that I do that. I feel like I'm getting a little bit better, but I do the same thing. And yeah, I can express it, and there's no question. You don't question whether I'm angry or I'm upset with you. It's very well known. But I also kind of go to a dark place where I just want to be by myself. I don't want to communicate. I've learned that social media can add a whole nother element to kind of our lives, and so that's something that Sam and I are learning to deal with. But I like your comment of, is this worth my energy? Because anger takes so much more energy than love and just gratefulness. And so I'm trying. I think it comes with age a little bit, but I agree with the factual, because I know that sometimes you get in a text war with people, and it's like the licks or the jabs, and I've learned that just ain't worth it. And I always tell my clients, this is gonna come out, and I can't use just one text. I have to use the whole conversation. So I have learned, sometimes you have to set up boundaries around yourself that protect you, and you have to put yourself first. But I definitely need to work on myself of saying, is this worth it? Mm-hmm. But sometimes when they cut you off, sometimes it really is worth it.
It can be, but then it's also like how much time and energy am I now going to have to spend to calm myself down after, and the person's not even there. And it's just like, I don't know this person enough to want to have this person influencing me for so long.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I really agree with that too, because for me, I think Kristen will verify that most people don't want to fight with me.
No.
But I go into like a low power mode state, and I'm like very observant of information, but I'm wearing it on my face, and probably a little too much. And so what I try to work on is I've been trying to tell myself lately, like, what's the result? What am I looking from this? Like, what am I looking to gain? And so, like, to your point, if someone's cutting me off, like, this person's not gonna come apologize to me and tell me I'm so sorry for ruining your day. So like, I agree, hey, that's, maybe not worth it. But if it's a friend or someone and there's a serious issue, I'm trying really hard to kind of look inside and go, but what do I want from this? Do I feel hurt? How can I better express it? Because even if I think in my, shower talk brain that I can have a conversation with someone and tell them you did this, this, and this, it never really produces the result I'm looking for, which is like resolution and we move forward, or hey, our paths should not cross anymore. So that's personally what I'm working on.
We're all a work in progress, but yeah, and family relationships and friend relationships and even work relationships, they can be challenging, and I think it's okay to have the anger, but like Dr. Imani said, you have to ask yourself, how much energy can I spend on this? And what, when you're focusing on that, there's other things in your life that are taking a back seat. And I know that when I'm in a dark place or I'm angry because it's something that's close to me or a relationship, I know it affects me as a mom, it affects me as a boss, it affects me as a lawyer and a wife, and it affects my whole family when I get like that. So, and I'm learning to lean on people more and just kind of letting things go.
Oh yeah, letting things go is, well, I listen, I will fully admit that through Prozac and just sleep. I've been able to let so many things go that, like, and also it seems like what you guys are also discussing is dealing with frustrations on a professional level versus a personal level. When I'm at work and I'm a psychiatrist and I'm seeing patients, and sometimes I have to deal with I see adults, but sometimes I do have to deal with their mom or a family member who may be really instrumental in their care, and this particular person might have been so involved in their care and they've seen so many doctors and it's really frustrating, and their family member is still sick, and they might say something kind of snarky to me, and it's kind of like, you know what, first of all, like, okay, I understand you're frustrated, you're not my patient, I have to do well by this particular person, so if you want to say whatever you want to say to me, that's fine, because at the end of the day, I'm going home,
right,
and I don't have to see you
after
this.
I like that.
Sam and I say that all the time. We're at the point in our careers that we get to pick our clients. When you're early in your career, you don't have a lot to say. You're just, you get your marching orders and you represent clients. But we're at the point where we get to pick. Just like they're picking us as an attorney, I'm picking you as a client, but we often have third parties that are involved. Sometimes they're paying, or sometimes they're heavily involved. They're a parent, and we have to have the same conversation. At the end of the day, this isn't my life, and I'm going to advocate for you, and I'm going to do what I need to do, but at the end of the day, I didn't create this mess. This isn't my life, and I need to live my life. But dealing with third parties can be frustrating.
Yeah, and I find, especially in Kristen and I's sort of career, is that a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times it becomes this like unnecessary conflict and distraction, which if you don't refocus, prevents you from doing the job you need to do, which is zealously protect your client.
And regardless of who's paying us, for anyone listening, our client is our client, and that's who we owe all of our duties to. So even if mom or dad or boyfriend, girlfriend are paying for the attorney's fees, that doesn't matter. Our client is our client. They get to make the decisions, and that's who we're advocating for. And I'm sure it's the same in your situation with your patients. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's talk about Dr. Imani and her background. Sam, take it away.
All right, so Dr. Imani specializes in caring for acutely ill psychiatric patients, including those with eating disorders, and providing mental health care to homeless and indigent populations.
Yes.
Okay,
that is a mouthful.
That is a mouthful. So tell us what is that in real life?
Okay, so in real life, so I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a physician. I went to med school. I did my residency. And after residency, I did a fellowship in forensic psychiatry. So I deal with patients who more so have a history of mental illness, and because of their symptoms of mental illness, they've committed crimes. So the majority of the patients that I do see either come from jail or prison or state mental hospital. In somewhere, somehow, the law enforcement and them have come together because of their symptoms.
Sure.
So I do that. Those are primarily the patients that I see. They can be challenging, but that's really what I wanted for my career. And other than that, I work for a hospital in LA called It's Gateways Hospital and Mental Health Center, and I'm the chief medical officer.
Wow. Well, we talk a lot about mental health on our show and how important it is, and how there should be no negative connotation with getting help and getting it frequent and often. And we see a lot of it in our line of work too. And I think everyone needs a therapist. Hands down, everybody does. And it's one of those things where you kind of fight going, and then you go, and it's like you feel like you lost 100 pounds.
Exactly.
It's like the gym, the trainer. You're like, oh my God, I got to be there at 6:30 in the morning. And then you go and you just feel good. But I can tell you, I've used therapy over the years for professional situations, for personal relationships and issues, and it has been so productive. And I kind of have one on speed dial, like, hey, this is coming up. What tools can I have, and how can I make sure that I don't get my emotions involved? Because that's one of my biggest issues, is I'm so passionate that sometimes my emotions can just take over.
Same. Yeah, same. But it's interesting. I've always been a very passionate person, but as I've gotten older and I've progressed through my career, I've basically said to myself, like, you know what, this is important now, but I do have to set boundaries for, like, as soon as I leave work, like, it stays there. So some people have asked me, like, oh, well, how can you deal with these patients and they're so involved? And I'm like, well, because when I go home, I have a whole set of other things I have to deal with and want to deal with.
And that's very important to be able to do that. It took me years to figure out how to do that.
Oh, same.
I'm still working on
as
that.
I say, I'm still working on it, but I have gotten, so I made a rule for myself. I don't look at emails past, 7 o'clock. And now I think it's like 5:30. Because when you look at those emails from clients or opposing counsels, and then, you lay in bed and you might be watching a show, it's the anxiety.
It
2,
just
3 in the morning. It's debilitating.
Right. And if you email me after 5, I mean, it sounds like we all have jobs where we're all kind of like on call-ish. But if you email me something at, close to end of business, what am I gonna really?
Yeah, it's like 4:30. What am I supposed to do?
What am I gonna do with this? Right, like, or not even what am I gonna do with this? But if I answer this, is there anything significant that's gonna happen between now and the next morning?
Yeah, clients will email us at 2, 3, 4 in the morning,
Right.
and people going through this process. Obviously, there's a lot of mental health issues and anxiety, so people are up. But I say the same thing. If you email me something at 3:30 and it probably warrants a restraining order, there's nothing I can do at that point.
Well, especially because the courts are closed.
Yeah, they're a hard close at 4:30. But I've also learned, like, when clients, and sometimes we have to make ourselves available by appointment after hours because, doctors or people that work, night shifts, things like that. But for the most part, I have learned, and it's taken me 15 years of saying, this is my hard line. When I'm at home, I am with my kids. I am running around a taxi driver, and I'm being present, and I don't look. And that is something that I wish that Sam would cut off around 6:37.
I will. She'll just have to deal with the complaints.
Well, what I
Someone's
tell those people is I have a life outside of this as well, just like you do. And I tell people, because almost every client has my cell phone number, which during COVID, that just kind of happened when I was calling everyone. And I always tell people, I'm going to give you this number, but please respect that after hours, I am a mom and I have 3 kids and I have my own life. And 90% of the people that I give it to will respect that. I always say, if it's a dire emergency, please text me or call the police. But please respect that I have an outside life as well.
Well, that's nice of you, though, because I have like 3 different phone numbers, and they all go to my cell phone.
The follow me thing,
right? But there's my cell phone, which no one has. There's like my burner phone, which I just kind of use because, like, we're all moms. So if you have to organize like a kids party, I don't necessarily need the bouncy house people to have my actual real number.
Well, what's funny? I just ordered
smart.
a bouncy house on Easter and they have my number.
Yeah. I'm like, you don't necessarily need my number. And then there's like my work line, which still goes to my phone, but like I've learned that
I need to get that.
Yeah,
that's a good level of separation.
Yeah,
because I tried the work phone and then just trying to have 2 phones, that didn't work. And so I need to do what you're doing and just have and sometimes I will do the star 67, but then nobody answers when it says it's a block call.
Exactly.
Right. And then you come up as like maybe spam.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
But no, I like that. I like that. Okay, well, let's talk about your podcast. So I actually checked it out.
Okay.
I love podcasts, and you can actually listen to Custody Queens on Air on any platform that has podcasts. We also are on YouTube if you want to watch us, because Dr. Amani is a hottie for sure. But we're kind of fun in person, so I always tell people, check us out. Go to custodyqueensonair.com. But Dr. Amani has a podcast called Imani State of Mind. So tell us about it.
So Imani State of Mind is essentially it's a podcast. It's my name is in the title. I have worked several years on myself, so I'd like for my listeners to have an Imani State of Mind, which is essentially, like, do whatever you can to create boundaries. Like, first of all, children love boundaries. Pets love boundaries. People love boundaries, even if they say that they don't.
I like it.
Managing expectations from the onset.
Exactly. There are certain people who can call me by my first name. My patients call me by my last name. That's just how I prefer it. And a lot of it is just because if you say my first name, I'm thinking that you're a certain type of a person, like we have a certain relationship. But if you call me by my last name, I know it's professional. So I know.
I like that.
Yeah, I know like how I should respond and like where my mindset should be. But I guess, having Imani state of mind is just doing what you can to put yourself first. We're all moms, wives, and yes, we love the people that we care for and made, but at the same time, if we're not happy and if we're not satisfied, then everything is going to completely go off track.
I agree 1,000%. Yeah. And I know that when I'm not okay, the whole family suffers.
Exactly.
And same with my husband. When he's going through something, we all suffer. But I agree 1,000%. You can't fill an empty. You have to. What does it say?
You have to fill your own cup first.
There you go.
Or put your own mask on first. Right.
Yeah.
Before you do your kids or anyone else's. But Imani State of Mind is essentially a podcast where it's me. I'm Imani. I'm kind of goofy. I'm a psychiatrist, but I'm not. I always joke with my patients that I'm like, I know psychiatrists can be kind of weird. We are by nature kind of strange. And I'm strange too, but I also am very jokey and just goofy, like I said. So I like to talk about just mental disorders, mental health issues, so that people can understand them better. Instead of people just kind of throwing out things like, oh, the weather's so bipolar today. And it's like, well, actually, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
Or
you're giving a stigma to bipolar rather than encouraging people to go get treatment, so it's not as much of an issue.
Right. Or really know what bipolar disorder means and what the symptoms are. And I'm like, the weather can't really do that, but it's okay.
Kristen and I see that a lot in our cases, is people throwing around terms, especially when there's not a diagnosis. Right. Like, oh, they're so bipolar, or they're this, or they're that. So we get that a lot.
She takes Zoloft, and I'm like,
okay.
Everybody should be on something.
Oh my God.
Right?
I take Prozac. God. Like if it wasn't for Prozac.
Right? Like when they say that, it's like, why? They'll call me and they're like, well, she takes antidepressants.
Like,
and I'm like, that actually makes her a better mom.
Exactly.
So we're not going to use this against her.
Right.
And people try to weaponize mental illness. And if people are getting the help and the treatment, we should encourage and be so positive about that rather than weaponizing it.
Exactly.
But when I listened to your podcast, I almost felt like it was like a session, Like, I was like, this is like real, like I'm getting free therapy right now. Yeah. So I encourage everybody listening to go check out Dr. Amani's podcast, Imani State of Mind. I'm already kind of feeling it. Like I need to listen on my way home today.
And how can our listeners get your podcast?
Well, like you were saying with Custody Queens, Imani State of Mind is streaming on all podcast platforms. Anywhere you listen, you can find.
I got it on iTunes.
Yeah, it's on iTunes.
Great.
It's on Spotify. It's on everything.
Okay, I have one last question that we got to squeeze in because this is important to me because I have small kids. So when it comes to children and mental health, especially during a divorce, what should parents look for in behavior changes, and when should they seek professional help? Because this happens so often when we have these high conflict where parents literally can't even sit at, counsel table together with two attorneys. And I just see what it does with the kids. And we do a lot of forensic custody evaluations with experts. And I've gotten to the point where, when I go home, I go home. But there are still cases that just pull on my heartstrings because I wish these people could get help.
Right. Well, I'm a child of divorce. My parents divorced when I was about 8 years old. And back then, it was very difficult because my dad essentially just left. He left, and then I got a chance to meet him later, but it was very difficult for me. And so a lot of the symptoms that I had, because I was essentially grieving, one, my parents' relationship, but also I didn't know where my dad was. So I'm like, is he dead? Is he okay? I had a lot of, I would complain a lot about stomach, like, oh, my stomach hurts today. And it really, my stomach didn't hurt.
Was it anxiety?
It was anxiety. It was like I didn't want to go to school because I needed time. And I didn't know how to express that. And so with children, because, I mean, if you have an emotionally intuitive child who's able to tell you exactly how you feel, then you're an awesome parent and that's great. But a lot of kids aren't able to do that. So they'll complain of like, oh, I feel sick, I have a headache.
My daughter does that. I have an 8-year-old, and I've noticed that she's very hard on herself. She's an athlete. She does gymnastics, soccer at the highest level. She trains 7 days a week, but she will tell me, and it took me about a year to kind of put it together, but she will tell me, my stomach hurts, Mom, my stomach hurts. And initially I thought maybe, but I was watching the pattern and I was like, I can see that when she's tired or she's worn out or she's scared of some new trick that she has to do or whatever it is, I can see her, but she can't really articulate to me but I can see it in her face and her eyes. And so I really, her and I talk a lot to have that open relationship. But I see it in so many of our cases. And if parents could put down the knives and look at the children and see what it's doing to them and what the long-term effect is, that's what Sam and I really try to do, is to normalize divorce, to make it not such a taboo thing. It's a new transition, but how do we do this where we can all move forward with the new relationships?
Yeah, and also, I mean, things change, people change, and it's hard for kids to understand that. I mean, look, you guys know it's hard for adults to understand that too, but it's like, look, we met, we fell in love, hopefully we got together, and I'm my own person, you're your own person. Maybe things happen, maybe they didn't, maybe we just can't be together because we're just not good with each other anymore, and that's okay. At the end of the day, it's like we have a kid or we have kids, and we have to put aside our own stuff. And that's where it's like, you know what, like, come up with a mantra, come up with some sort of an exercise so that before you do have to see your former spouse or soon be former spouse, you are not so overcome with emotion that you just start spewing. Like, just keep it factual and just cool, and just like, okay, you want to get in a job, that's fine, see you later. Right, see you later.
Sorry you feel that way.
Right, because if you really like let it roll off of you, when you walk away or drive away, you'll more so be kind of happy with yourself and honoring yourself, instead of like, oh my God, I hate this person and how dare they said this to me, and it just...
That is so true. It is so true, because whenever you react like that, I find myself then like having an internal conversation with myself going, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And then like to make myself feel better, like, but they did that, and then you're just monopolizing your own time later. And anytime you actually don't do anything, you kind of actually get a little bit of like, not happiness, but you feel better about it. Yeah. You feel kind of calm. Right. Yeah.
And it's one thing to say you're letting it roll off you, and this is what I'm learning. I'm okay to say it, but I'm actually still in the process of really feeling it. But like, my daughter came home from school the other day and she said, Mom, you'll never guess what happened. So-and-so's parents are getting a divorce. It's so sad. And I had a conversation with her similar to what you just said. I said, it's not a bad thing, honey. She, just like so-and-so and so-and-so's, friends, they just live in 2 houses. They have 2 parents that love them, but people grow apart. And trying to explain that to an 8-year-old, but I can see that, she's understanding it a little bit more. But if we can teach our kids that it's not a bad thing, that people change, then if it happens, it's not so bad.
Right. It happens.
But all right, this went way too fast. Dr. Imani, we'd love to have you on again at some point, because one, I love your shoes. Those are killer. Great. I just love your shoes. But if you need to find Dr. Imani, how can our listeners? Do you have a website? How can they reach out to you?
I do. So I'm on most social media platforms. I'm on Instagram more so. My Instagram is @Doctor, which is the word DOCTOR. _ Imani, which is IMANI. That's my name. Website is dr-imani.com. Honestly, I mean, not to sound like, oh, you should Google me, but if you Google my name, that's really
it'll
the easy.
All come
right,
up.
it'll all come up.
Good old Google. I love Google.
Yeah,
I love Google and
too.
YouTube everything. How do I fold this stroller?
Yes.
How best to store a cucumber.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us today with Dr. Imani. It was a great Saturday morning. I hope everyone is having the mantra of release and, just let it go. But we loved having you, and we look forward to seeing you next Saturday on Go Country 105. And remember, you can call us at 1-800-419-7772.
That's 1-800-419-7772.
And remember, let love rule.